Will you join me in a word of prayer? Oh, dear living God, we thank you so much, Lord, for this blessed Sabbath gathering. Thank you so much for the discussions we've had, Lord. Most of all, we thank you so much that the lesson that Elaine just showed us proves that you, Lord, you're in charge of this movement. It's your movement, Lord. And we just want to sing praises to you and thank you, Lord, for your love and your pity on us, Lord, in our weaknesses, and how you're working to continually grow our mindset and our understanding of your character, a redeeming work that you're doing within each one of us, Lord. And we ask, Lord, that you continue to keep our hearts steadfast and true to you, so that no unworthy affection will drag us downwards, that we will continue to stay, Lord, on the higher ground as you raise us and as our faith strengthens, Lord, that no tribulation will be able to wear us out. Thank you, Lord, for this continual work you're doing and to prepare us for our job function. And may our hearts be strengthened that we can do this teaching job function, Lord, and that we'll grow into this position and make you proud of us, Lord. And as we move into the next part of our service, we ask that your Holy Spirit continue to be with us and in our conversations and words, and please guide Elaine as she instructs us on Islam, very important movements that are taking place, Lord. So may we gain more understanding and just thank you. Thank you so much, Lord, for everything you do for each and every one of us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Susan. I was just going to do, and I don't remember what it was. So for those that were here Wednesday, we were continuing on. So I would like it if we could help out those that were here on Wednesday, help those that weren't. And we try to do a kind of a quick review. You know what I want to do? I need to turn my volume up. My mind said I had something I needed to do and I couldn't remember what it was. So just if we could do a little bit of review on what we went through so far. What did we determine was a trumpet? Don't remember if it's all of this. What did we determine as a trumpet?
It was a judgment, right?
The judgment. So when you go into the book of Revelation and you get to chapter 8, and you see the first 4 trumpets, and then you see chapter 9, and it's 2 more trumpets. And we know that there's 7 trumpets. The 7th trumpet is mentioned then in as well in Revelation 11. No, but try to think of what Revelation is. It says woe, because the next 3 are going to be woes, right? At the end of Revelation 8. The next 3 are going to be woes. What did we come to understand that the woe portion of it meant?
The intensity of the judgment?
The intensity of the judgment. Okay, so the trumpet is a judgment, and the trumpet pertains specifically to what? Or who? What? Trumpets, I should say. Trumpets.
Is it bringing down the Sunday law?
Yeah, I guess you could say it that way, but who is it on?
Rome.
Islam.
No, who is the judgment going to be placed upon?
Rome,
In our day, it's modern Rome, but it was on
pagan
Rome.
Rome,
The
pagan
three
Rome.
faces of Rome.
Yeah, three phases of Rome. They're gonna go there. Thank you. So yeah, Sarah put in there Rome. And so the judgments were, we see that the trumpets are judgments. And we're judgments specifically on Rome. We saw it in three phases: pagan, papal. What's the third one?
Modern.
Modern Rome. Okay, so Revelation 8, you have the first four trumpets. What brought on the first four trumpets?
Wasn't it the Sunday law passed at 321?
Correct. Do we have that on here? Yeah. Yeah, right here, right here. So yes, correct. So Constantine makes a Sunday law. And now you're gonna see the four trumpets in this history. And so who were the four trumpets? Some of you remember where, and I seem to only remember who. So maybe we can combine together what we know.
Ostrogoth is one.
Which one?
Alaric?
Is that Alaric?
I'm not sure.
Genseric.
We could do process of elimination because I think we all know this one is Hun.
Right, Attila the Hun.
Oh, can you repeat your question? I thought you wanted us to name the four.
Yeah,
What was
well, I
your
want to try
question?
to combine it so that we, maybe at least myself, maybe all of us want to. I don't know how much we need to know at this point in time, but just so I teach it right. Which one was the Germanic, you said, Phil?
Yeah, I think it was Germanic, but I think those are the tribes, but I think specifically I think the Vandals. I know they're the Vandals, the Ostrogoth, and the Visigoth. And I don't know what order they came in, but yeah, Vandals, Ostrogoths, and Visigoth.
Okay, well, maybe we'll leave it that way for now. I don't think for now, I don't think it matters that much, just that I noticed that when you brought that up the other day, it's like, I remember the names. So you had Alaric, Attila, Odiaker, is that how you say that? Odaker? And then Genseric.
Odieser.
Odieser. And then Genseric. So you have these four barbarian tribes that will become the trumpet or the judgment that is going to be in result of the Sunday law that Constantine made, right? And then we come to papal Rome, then in 538, papal Rome and this is the second phase of Rome, makes a Sunday law. And so what happens as a result?
The fifth and sixth trumpets come.
The fifth and sixth trumpets. And now you go to whoever said it earlier, it might have been Gloria, Islam. Somebody said Islam, right? So 606, we see that Muhammad, that's when Muhammad goes into the cave, Hira, Hira or Hera, I think something like that, spelled two different ways. I don't know if I said them right. Muhammad goes into the cave, has the vision, gets instruction, and we're looking at this from Revelation 9. And so this is going to be the beginning of the rise of Islam. Because we see the Sunday law back here at 538. At 606 is when you have this new Islam, this new religion, which we saw is a false religion, right? It's a false religion. Okay, so what's going on in this history here? There's a battle going on. And who's this battle?
Is it is it Battle of Nineveh? 627?
No, not yet. Kind of what we have.
Or is it Muta? Is it Muta?
No, not yet. And I don't have that one in my memory banks, but no, it's Nicomedia. Nicomedia. Anybody remember the details of that we went through? That wants to try to repeat it? We got a key. Does that ring a bell? Everybody's silent.
You said between pagan Rome and Persia?
Correct. Pagan Rome and Persia. Do you want to elaborate?
I forgot the king's name from Persia, but he was visited by Muhammad, seeking if he wants their help, but doesn't he reject Muhammad's help?
Yes.
And he tears the letter, and that's their fate. They lose the war.
Yes. So Muhammad sends an ambassador to Khosrows, was the king. And the letter's read to Khosrows, and Muhammad is asking for Persia to, I don't know the right word to use, to leave their religion of the gods, many gods that the gods that they follow, and follow the one true God, Allah. And then we'll help you defeat Rome. Right? And so Khosrows does what?
Rejects it. Yeah.
Rejects it. And this war between Persia and Rome had been going on for many years. Khosrows rejects it and then gets defeated by Rome. So Persia then is out of the way for this false religion to come up and spread. Just kind of had a thought. I'm not going to be afraid to share thoughts and ask questions. What do we think of this? Because did Muhammad go into a cave and God said, hey, there's this false religion up there, or this apostate religion up there, and they made a Sunday law, and I want you to go destroy them? Do you think that's the message that he got?
No.
What kind of message do you think he got? We don't know. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at the Quran, so once briefly a long time ago. You got the one true God, right? So if this is the one true God, and you've got this other religion up here, they're going to spread the truth of this one true God.
Yeah, like the spreading of the gospel, but by force. And they think they're defending their God's character and upholding their God's truth and ideals.
So they come at a time, though, to bring judgment on this, right?
Yes.
So they believe they're the true religion, and Allah is the one true God. And we need to get rid of all of those other gods that everybody else follows, because everybody needs to follow the one true God, Allah.
Similar, it's similar in a way to how the Catholic Church worked, because you could recant and join the church or be burned at the stake, right? Or recant what your belief was, right, and join the church. So they give you the same option: recant your false belief in their eyes and join us, or we're going to annihilate you.
Radical, Mary says, must have been really radical. Yeah. And somebody just said the word a minute ago that it's really helpful for me when I do try to stay on a topic and really focus on it. And I'm not real good at that. Never been one diagnosed with ADHD either, but I just do a lot. I have a lot that I deal with in life. So, but I've really kind of jumped in on this one and really trying to look at the histories and such. But somebody mentioned the word force, right? Do we know is it verse 39, Daniel 11:40? Is it verse 39 where it talks about the God of force? I don't know that verse to break it down. but that is a place that some of my thoughts went to as I'm going through this history. And so it would be something, you know, that I might down, you know, maybe we can talk about or explore, but they got to force, because I don't know if that's what it means, but definitely this is going to try to force it for sure. But so does the Catholic Church, like Susan just said. But if you could compare and contrast that, because God forced.
No, but how does that say his love constraineth us? So it is an inward working that works to mold and change you, but you allow that work to be done in you. The other is not an inward, their religion is not inward, it's outward. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
I think so.
That's why they use force. It's outward.
I was thinking this morning about when we were talking about the 20% and the 80%, just a little while ago, this morning before we ever got started, I was thinking about why, you know, why are there X amount of people in the movement? And we hear repeatedly that, you know, we hear that there's a problem in trusting leadership, accepting leadership, and we want a democracy, we want to choose our own leaders, we want, you know, all these different things. It shows that we're not in good condition. The institution is correct, and the institution doesn't force. So I was thinking about that this morning in my own journey, because God draws us, right? The 3 a.m. study, he was talking about, what do we call that thought that I just had? God draws us in the prophetic. That's where I was going to, where he talked about, we was talking about the Nethinims, and he talked about it being prophetic, that the Nethinims are a subject of prophecy. So if you took that agricultural line and you factor in the Nethinim, the line of the Nethinims, and it's a subject of prophecy, then I started thinking about that in terms of why I'm here. Does a Nethinim, did a Nethinim have every opportunity to be here? Because if the Holy Spirit has been drawing people unto themselves, what is our part?
To respond.
To respond.
And I was thinking of Hosea 11:4, that God draws them, right? It says, I draw them with cords of a man with bands of love, remember, right? And I was to them as they that take off the yoke on their jaws, and I laid meat unto them. And the yoke on the jaws is kind of, I'm thinking about it, how culture has imprisoned us, and God's going to remove that yoke from the jaw and feed us with this everlasting truth. But he's the one who's drawing us, but we have to respond accordingly.
And so if you reject and you continue on the line, because regardless, this is representing all humanity. It's the line of the 144,000, but all humanity are involved, right?
With the exception of what Elder Parmenter mentioned today about those that are a law all unto themselves.
Yeah, that was looking at the other history, yeah. So would it be safe to say that God's been drawing more than just those that are here, and a lot of people reject it? And is it safe to say that God is drawing within here, and there are still those that reject it all along the way?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable.
So, okay, so you have a false religion that's raised up. There's a battle in this history. I don't remember, I think it started in here somewhere early on. I don't remember the specific year. But you come to the point of the Battle of Nicomedia. They've been fighting for many years. And Muhammad sends his ambassador to Khosrows to ask him to denounce his religion and join Islam and merge with Islam. Because what do we have? Eventually we have, this is going to be the Ottoman Empire, right? Eventually. And so they want to spread their religion throughout. And they believe that Allah is the true God, one God, and that's Allah. So all these others are false, not them. And so Khosrows rejects the invitation and then gets defeated by Rome. But at that time, Rome has been already through the years of battle, worn down as well. So Persia's out of the way, and this opens the gate for the false religion to come into Rome, right? So then we saw this as being, we saw the first four trumpets. We understand this to be this history here, go all the way to here. You have the sixth trumpet. I think I have that all the way down because it actually goes all the way to 1840. So you have the sixth trumpet and you have the first and second woe. And in 1299, what did we see happened in 1299? If you were here Wednesday and you do know, feel free to speak up. What happened in 1299?
Isn't that the first woe?
Yeah, but
That's the beginning of first war. I think that's Nicomedia, that one. And I think the 627 is Battle of Nineveh.
Yeah, you might be right. Maybe I do have that.
Yeah.
You're right. I'll correct that. Sorry.
I get confused with all these battles.
Okay, you know, I do it too. Okay, sorry. Thank you for that. So that's the Battle of Nineveh. But yes, the woe begins, but what happens that brings that intensity? You got this false religion. What does it become?
Caliphate?
Don't they have a king over them?
And
Is
who
that
is
when
that
they
king?
start?
Caliphate?
Apollyon and Abaddon.
No, literally.
Oh, Othman.
Othman. So you have the beginning of the Ottoman Empire, right? So you have Othman. Now they're united. Caliphate have king over them,
In Concord.
and then you have the woe. Okay. So I don't know how much of this history we're going to go into to review. What I wanted to think about, and I don't have this pulled up, so everybody's gonna have to go from memory, but I'm sure we won't have a problem with it. Who's on the bottom right corner of the 1850 and 1843 chart?
Islam.
Islam, right? Identifying Islam as what? Radical Islam, radical.
The Woes.
Angry horse.
Don't know that you have radical back here, but we know we're talking radical when we talk about today. The angry horse, what else? What else are they?
The Woe.
The
The
woe.
Woe.
The woes, right? So the first and second woe are on those charts, correct?
Yes.
So I don't know another direction to go, but to go straight up here. So you're an Adventist now, going through this history. You have Uriah Smith saying that the king of the north is Turkey, and the king of the south is Egypt, and the hymn is France. And he goes through that history showing, don't know if we have that that was on another one. Yeah, I think I erased it. So you have, Uriah Smith saying that, but James White is saying, no, he's not right. Even though Ellen White says that Daniel in the Revelation, the book, was God's helping hand, that part wasn't correct, is coming from Ellen White. That part isn't correct. And, but we've learned since then, back 2019, 2020, when this began to open up, that was correct, that the hymn, the papacy receives its deadly wound. Napoleon goes to Egypt, the Egyptian expedition. What does he go to Egypt for?
Well, he wants to access the trade routes
And cut off who? The economic.
because he wants India.
Wants to cut off
Britain?
Great Britain.
Britain, yeah.
He wants to cut
Oh,
off the economy to Great Britain. And as a result of that, I do have some of that here. Good. Sorry, looking at this line. I do have some of that here. So he wants to cut off the trade route. And Egypt is what to the Sultan?
A vassal state.
The vassal, right? So, but Egypt has his own ideas. He's called the Pasha, which I think we found. I'm pretty sure what I found. I don't remember if somebody commented differently or not, but what I found, the Pasha was just a title that is given to him by the Sultan. It's a title that they get, but anyways, he's a vassal to the Sultan. And so you have you have Egypt, Napoleon coming down, and he's defeated by Egypt. And then he starts to head up to Syria, and he's defeated by the king of the north. So you have the king of the south goes at him, the Napoleon, and then the king of the north comes at him like a whirlwind. And eventually Napoleon goes back to France. I think he gets called back to France, but he goes back to France. And in this history, as we traced a little bit of this line here, who's Wahhab?
Radical. Well, that's, yeah, radical Islam, Wahhabism.
Yeah, which branch?
I always get this wrong. Is it Sunni?
Sunni. Yeah. So it's radical, the radical Sunni is the Wahhabism. And there's a battle between, and when I looked it up, it said Ottoman and then it said Saudi Arabia. So it's the Wahhabi-Saudi war. And so if I understand that correctly, it's going to be the radicals at war with the non-radicals. I don't know if that's the way to say that, if anybody understands it differently, because the Sunnis and the Wahhabis, they are Muslim. And then you have the Ottomans, who are also Muslim. So you've got this war that goes on, and I don't have the dates, and I definitely erased that board that had the dates on there. It's like
I've
It's,
got 1260.
Are you asking for the Wahhabi War?
yeah, it was like 1811 to 1818 or something.
Yes, yeah, 1811 to 18. I was just
Ah.
thinking about the increase of knowledge there in our Miller history.
Great job, Gloria.
Okay, so 1818 to 11, this is the Wahhabi war. And then if you have the dates too, that would be good. I'm pretty sure it ended in here somewhere, where you had the War of Greek Independence. And I don't remember where it started, but it was around 1823 or something like that. You have the War of Greek Independence. So in this War of Greek Independence is where the Sultan calls upon his vassal, Egypt, to come and help to take down and defeat this uprising from the Greeks. And the Sultan promises in exchange something. What I read, and it's probably listed someplace else, there's a whole lot of sources to read from, and where I read thus far, it didn't name Syria. But I think we've heard that it is Syria that he was promised. So just FYI from what I've read so far, but we can read many articles and many will give more details. So, but anyway, so the Sultan promises the king of Egypt, the king of the north promises the king of the south something in exchange for his help in helping to take down this Greek war. So the Battle of Nicomedia, if Gloria has it, is that battle that was in there. No, that one wasn't with Nicomedia either. They all start with N.
Navarre.
Say that.
No, I was thinking of an N too. Like
Navarino, something like that. That Navarino or Navarino, that's the battle here. And so they lose. There's details into that. It's what was blocked. I think they blocked the ships from being able to come in. And you also have now these great powers of Europe that are helping. And they're on the side, the great powers of Europe. There were 3 of them at the time that were helping Greece. They were helping the Greeks in this battle. So the king of Egypt did go to help, but then they lose that battle. But then the Sultan, even though he promised the king of Egypt for his payment for his help, he reneged and did not pay him for his help. And that brings you to the Syrian War, the 10-year Syrian War here. It began in 1831 and ends in 1840. So, and we see that there was 2 years of an intense battle, 2 years down here at the end with this battle, and 6 years in between. So, and we know that this was lined up with 2011 and 2021. And so what happens here? August 11th.
he surrendered to the, I wanted to say 4 allies. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
see, a
Is that right?
restraint, right?
Elder Parmenter talks about 2 restraining. We usually understand as 1 restraint, but there's a restraint to Egypt and Turkey, right?
I'm not there yet, so I can't comment on that.
So Turkey surrendered their Syria to the Egyptians, but then the 4 great powers came in and
You're
possession.
You're saying the same thing. There was one sultan, and you have the 4 great powers. So yes, king of the north, Turkey is restrained. Turkey is restrained. So it's a restraint of Islam, because the king of the north, if you look at it from Josiah Litch, which we are in agreement with, you look at it from Josiah Litch, that Turkey is the king of the north, and that would represent the restraint of Islam. It was the restraint of the king of the north by the 4 great powers, the surrender of the king.
Yeah, and then Egypt is also restrained from taking Syria. So
okay, that part
goes further.
Okay.
Yeah, he goes further on explaining that.
Okay, maybe you can send me that, then I can watch that one too. So that I can.
It's that video that was in the School of the Prophets in Brazil. Islam in Prophecy or the Histories, one of those.
Okay. Okay, so hopefully we're up to speed on this line. So now let's take, when I asked the question about the charts, and we see that on the charts, Islam is there, right? So we come to 1979. We talked on Wednesday about 3 different battles here. Does anybody remember them?
Do you mean
Different
Afghanistan?
wars? Afghanistan?
Soviet Afghanistan. I have.
Iran Revolution.
And what was the other one? Anybody remember the third one?
Was it Iraq?
Yeah, Iraq. And you have to go even further back, because back here, you're gonna see the United States helping Saddam Hussein.
Yeah. And
Okay.
also you're making me think what you just said about the earlier, the Egypt, the Pasha, and how he was given that title. And I was remembering the Shah of Iran and how he was sort of an American puppet and given that title. Sort of you see the same dynamics playing out. And I was thinking about that before you even went up there.
Ally. How do you spell ally? Is it A-L-L-Y?
And it used to be called Persia before that, because I was a little girl and I played with this family who were from
It is.
Iran, but they
Yeah.
didn't want to tell me they were from Iran. She made sure to tell me they were from Persia because they were very upset about that change that took place.
It was the end of the Persian monarchy.
Yes, they were very upset about it. And she did not want to be associated with Iran, only Persia.
So this revolution overthrows the Shah of Iran. And there, Iran is mainly Shia, right? And you can go back into history. I know I found this in some of my studies. Go back into history and see that Iran wasn't always, or Persia, Iran. It wasn't always in the early days of Muhammad. And then you had the split come. And the split, who remembers what the split was over? Shia and Sunni. Who was this? What was the split over?
The heirs, the heirs by bloodline or the one appointed.
Right. So it'd be
It's
like
an Abu Bakr versus Muhammad.
it was when Muhammad died, it was Muhammad's cousin, and he was cousin and son-in-law, something like that. So bloodline versus
That's kind of funny too when you think about it, because it relates to sort of the Jewish argument, right? That you hear, or the descendants of Abraham, right? Or the real, or the spiritual descendants, which would be appointed. If you follow what I'm trying to say, it's a similar argument.
so you have that back in this, let's see, be in this history here early on. I think it was within 100 years. You have this Shia Sunni split, and it was over who would be the successor of Muhammad. Would it be going through the bloodline? And I believe I might have this mixed up. The bloodline, I think, was the Shia side. Maybe somebody can correct me on that. I don't know if how much that matters. It may matter. Details maybe matter at another time, but right now, at least, I'm not sure on that. So anyway, so you have that split. And when you come up to, and it's after this, somewhere in this history here, before 1798, where you have the House of Saud rise up, Saud rise up, which is just, isn't it just the name that's a monarchy that becomes Saudi Arabia? Did I say that right?
Yes, yeah.
So it's the name, so they become the monarchy and they become
King
the monarchy.
Faisal.
So what'd you say?
Oh, I'm remembering what my ex-husband, who was raised in Saudi Arabia, he had all the pictures of like King Faisal's yacht and all that,
Oh, yeah.
right? From the House of Saud.
So, so this Wahhabi Ottoman or Saudi war was would be then between, it was within Islam, a civil, I guess you call it a civil war, it's within Islam, but it's the radicals versus must be the non-radicals. That's the best way I understand it. But it was war within Islam. And it was actually the Pasha of Egypt that sends his son down here that, I don't know that he extinguishes, but the Wahhabis lose that battle. Okay, so back to this history here. And keeping in mind that the two charts have Islam on them, right? As the woe. Two charts say that. So you have this history going on here. Back in here is where you're going to have the Saudis discover oil. Who helps them with their oil refinery business?
America.
United States, right?
Yeah. Mobil oil and all that went in there.
So you got the USA supporting Saudi Arabia. And in this history here, USA is also an ally to the Shah of Iran. Now you have 1979 and you have the Iranian Revolution where you have the Ayatollah Khomeini. And now the Ayatollah will be the leader, will be religious and political leader. Bring in strict Sharia law. You have the war in Afghanistan. This is the one I really want to focus on especially. Who's fighting in the war of Afghanistan?
We were in there.
Huh?
We were in there.
Is it Russia?
Yeah, Russia. So let's put it this way. What Susan's saying is accurate. So if it's a proxy war, who's the fight?
Who's the fight?
Yeah, who's in the fight? It's a proxy war. So who's really
Russia and the United States.
right?
The king of the North and the king of the South.
So you have the king of the South and you have the king of the North. Okay. And so you've got this war that's happening in Afghanistan. Russia, if you go back into the history prior to, Russia is actually doing the same thing that you see where, lost my train of thought. What that you saw Napoleon do. Napoleon wants to cut off economic trade to Great Britain. And
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, I just had I just had a thought. Because we know that the king of the South dies, right, at the Sunday law, but 2021, we're seeing him going down, which reminds me of what you showed us with Rome and Persia, and then the Arabians were able to go in. So I'm seeing how with Russia out of the way, it's going to be Islam in the United States. I see it. Is that wrong to say that?
So in Acts 27, it says what wind blows first.
The south wind, then the east.
Then comes Euroclydon. Or Euroclydon, right?
Yeah, but that also throws me because at the end of that, where the south wind comes in before Puteoli, but Elder Test marks it as fair winds, but it's also a south wind, just like at the beginning when the south wind comes before the Euroclydon.
I still have videos of hers that I need to go back and review because I don't want to get that wrong. But you have the king of the South here, right? And there's a deadly wound and then a death. Then we see, I think she marks 2003. Is it 2003 as the resurrection? So then you have the king of the South again. And then you have the king of the South die. And then the east one would follow. Is that right?
Well, yes.
Okay, so I don't know if I have your answer.
You can see it if it's following the same pattern as what you showed us there, the Catholic apostate church and Rome, and how Persia, once it was out of the way, then Islam was able to go in. So when Russia's out of the way, Islam will be able to go in. Well,
And what does that false religion want to do?
kill the false religion of the United States.
Yeah. So you have, let me see here. So you have Afghanistan. It's a proxy war. It's Russia and the United States. Okay, so who's fighting in Afghanistan now? I hope I asked that question. You come.
The Taliban, the theocratic government versus,
Isn't this before the Taliban?
oh,
It's
I thought you
Mujahideen.
asked now.
The
Never
Mujahideen.
mind. Sorry, I cut someone off too.
That's okay. I heard it. I think it was just Gloria, but it might have been somebody else that I missed. The Mujahideen, right? Which is who? Who's with the Mujahideen?
The United
Laden.
States.
Bin Laden. And yes, who's supporting Bin Laden?
The United States.
Supports Bin Laden, right? Okay. Or he supports the Mujahid. They support the Mujahideen. Why do they support the Mujahideen? Who's the Mujahideen fighting? Literally fighting.
Oh, I forget, but it's an
Soviet-
enemy of the United
Soviet
States.
Union.
The Soviet Union.
Oh, yeah.
The Soviet Union. So it's a proxy war, and the United States is backing the Mujahideen, giving them weapons. They go in there and fight. So here you see the deadly wound for the King of the South, and then you see the death, the King of the South. Then you see the east wind, right? Okay, so let's just park here for a minute and go back to that thought on the charts. We're Seventh-day Adventists. And we have that history. And the charts don't even come in till 2005. Is that right? When the charts first come in? You have all this history going on with Adventism. While all this is happening, you have from, I don't know if you want to go all the way back to 1844, you go to 1863, or you go to 1888, but you have all that history, right? And what happens with Adventism along that journey?
They're asleep.
Thank you, Christina.
They're asleep. And they're actually joining apostate Protestantism.
Yeah, so you have a lot going on in Adventism at rejecting the past.
Yep. And they see Islam the same way that Trump sees Islam, like don't allow any of them into the country, da 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 da. Yeah.
So the chart tells us that 1 and 2 are in this history. Woe 1 and 2 are this history here, and tells us what 1 and 2 were to do. 1 we put here. I don't think we quite. Yeah, we did mark it out. In the second woe. So you have the first woe and the second woe is this false religion that Uriah Smith says is a false religion to go against and be a scourge against an apostate church. This false religion claims to be the one true religion. So it wants to take over everything and be the one true religion. So this history taught us, Adventist history, Josiah Litch, understanding what a trumpet is, understanding what a woe is, understanding who the trumpets and the woes are, was all this history to understand, so that when you get up here and you see all this activity in the Middle East going on, I'll ask the question that's the title to that one in this Portugal School of the Prophets: was 9/11 necessary? Islam is the trumpet, radical Islam. Radical Islam is the woe.
Yes, I think it was necessary because we know that Trump would have even was going to run back then, right? Things would have moved along a lot faster. I mean, we already have had to play catch up because the movement was so far ahead. So in a sense, that had to happen to slow that movement down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know if that was to slow it down, but definitely we weren't ready. No one would have been saved. Because in 1989, you get this movement raises up, and what's the message in 1989?
Do you mean line upon line?
Line upon line, right? Okay. So line upon line. Is Islam in those lines?
Yes.
I don't know, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I think the answer could be either one depending on your perspective. What I actually mean is from, I'm gonna use me and my naivety. And I'm in here somewhere, come along. And yeah, I know about 9/11. I'm learning bits and pieces of it. But was it here?
It had to be.
But was there understanding of Islam in the message?
No.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm making.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about the message, but I know the conference, there was nothing. There was no understanding at all.
Right.
No, in the church I belonged to in Hayward, the Adventist church, right next door was an Islamic temple. And they were building a fence. They didn't even want to look at them. And I thought to myself when I first went to that church, this is Isaac and Ishmael, right next door to one another. But they have the same hatred and fear of Islam, not even just the radical elements. They just have total wrong understanding.
So looking at, if I heard both of you correctly on that, you're talking about Adventism.
Yes,
Yeah,
Adventism, but also
yeah.
the movement.
Okay, what about the movement?
Well, it didn't have that information yet, but it arrived. We know that when a message arrives, it's got everything in it, even if the understanding hasn't increased yet upon that message.
So when August 11th, 1840 happened, what is that called?
Prediction.
No. Yeah, but what is it? What is it called?
Empowerment, you mean?
Empowerment.
Oh,
How does
yeah.
Ellen White say it?
It was the first angels empowerment.
First angels empowerment. What else?
Yeah.
What else does it say? Isn't it a glorious manifestation?
Manifestation of the
Mhm.
power of God.
So we're literally still blind, right? Because we got this message of the king of the north and the king of the south, but we don't have anything about Islam. And yet the trumpets, the 5th, 6th, and 7th trumpet, are on the chart saying that the 1st and 2nd woes are Islam. You get the history from the Adventist pioneers, and yet we're coming here and we get line upon line. We've got this message of the king of the south. We understand at the time of the end, but we don't even know who the judgment. We don't know. We don't know two things. This is the way I've come to understand it, and there's probably more, but there's two things we don't know. Does anybody know the two things we don't know that we know today? There's a whole lot, but
You mean the Sunday law
what
and
about
the
it? What
and
about it?
the advent of Christ?
What about the
Or
Sunday law?
well, we're not looking for an obscure pope to pass something because of climate change. We've been given clear waymarks and the Sunday law, the message of gender and equality also arrived in 1989. Not on this line you're showing, but the line that Elder Tess does.
Yes, and we were still blind to it, right? Even though it arrived,
Yeah.
but we were blind to it. So we're blind to we're expecting, the announcement is the Sunday law is imminent, and that Sunday law is going to be a literal Sunday law, right? That's gonna bring on what? The literal Sunday law is gonna bring on what?
Armageddon.
You mean Sabbath Sunday issues?
No, because it's gonna bring on judgment, right?
Oh, yeah.
Who delivers the judgment?
Making me laugh now because
Who delivers the judgment?
oh, how funny.
I'm gonna
It
say God.
Islam,
Well,
right?
yeah. Who does God use? Does somebody, I think I heard it.
God is what Phil said.
So, yeah,
Is it the government or?
who's the judgment? Who's the judgment,
It's Islam.
right?
Yes.
So who brings the judgment? Yes, God's behind all of it, but God's not. People are still doing their own thing. They're still making their own choices, right? But
It's 12 o'clock.
what's that? I heard somebody, but it was very faint.
God uses people.
Right. So the judgment, we've seen down here through this whole story that a trumpet is a judgment, and the judgment is on Rome in 3 phases. So the 3rd phase is modern Rome, right? And you have the first 2 woes being in the Millerite history. We know the 3rd woe is our history, and therefore judgment comes. God's tool, however you want to refer to it, is going to be radical Islam, right? So you're in this history and you get this message of the king of the north and the king of the south. So you're blind to 2 things. So what are the 2 things we're blind to?
Islam and the Sunday law.
And the Sunday law, right? And then what happens?
How about time setting too? Are we blind to time setting?
Yeah, time was here because the time of the end, we identified the time of the end, so time was there. Right? But you don't have, we still want to stick to, okay, well, we'll just kind of, I don't know how to say it, accept this thing that 1989 is called the time of the end, but we don't really, do we really accept, I don't know how to answer that. Do we really accept time? Because when the message of time came in, and a prediction was made, no, there's no more time. But obviously there was time back here because it's called the Time of the End magazine, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we're missing this after looking at this history, had we known known the past and known prophecy more accurately, we even had it. What do you call it when they did stamp? Is that how you would put it? It's stamped on the charts, right? And yet you come into this history and you see all this activity going on in the Middle East, going all the way back to, and plus, well, you could go back and look at even beyond 1840, the Ottoman Empire still dragged on until World War I ended.
Yeah, which is similar to what Russia probably will do.
You see, it dragged on as the Ottoman Empire still.
And the same with the United States in a sense, because we know it's transitioning to the 7th kingdom, but it's still dragging on. People won't necessarily recognize, right? Because it's still called the United States. They won't necessarily recognize what we're saying here.
So so we're in this movement, we're not, but this movement's being raised up. And the message that you get is the right message. I'm not trying to dispute that. I hope that doesn't sound that way. I'm not trying to dispute that. I'm asking myself questions and asking us the questions. What were we missing? And then the question is, was 9/11 necessary?
Am I wrong to say yes?
I think it had to be, because if the judgment is going to be radical Islam, the 3rd woe is going to come down on this nation for making a literal Sunday law. whether at the time, we're still thinking it's a literal Sunday law, and that's who's coming to punish the United States, and we don't even know it, right?
Yes, but I think we're missing one more element.
What's that?
I think we're missing because I can't help but you brought in that letter of bin Laden, and he was so upset with the United States supporting Israel. And I think Israel has got to be a piece of this with the United States because it's the two false religions being
That-
upheld in the United States.
Yeah, because I do want to trace some of that as well.
Yeah, we even did something in 1844. I've got the dates listed. It'll be up to all of us to work on it together, but I'll list the history of the things that's involved with.
Okay, good. I look forward to it. So 9/11 happens, and not just Adventism, but even within the movement as in its early days, nobody saw it coming, right?
No, it was caught by surprise.
So we get this information, midnight cry and all this other information we get, and then 2019 to 2020 starts opening up this light on the correct history here of the King of the North and the King of the South in this history here in 1798. That opens up, which opens up to show Islam. And we also looked at 2019, early August 2019, which was the year and the month of the international camp meeting in Germany. It was the end of the month. So early in August is when this first starts to open up, and that was in Brazil. That Gloria, I think, mentioned, was in Brazil, and this history starts to open up. To be able to then examine 2001. So I think from there, I'm not completely ready with this, but I think if we're okay with it, if everybody's okay, we'll spend a little bit of time in 9T. Does anybody have any comments on what we've done so far?
I have a question, like, so bin Laden was upset at US because, no, at Saudi Arabia because they were helping Saudi Arabia or Israel?
Israel.
Yeah, I'll go through that in just a
And
second.
we have a bilateral relationship with Israel, and we go back to putting in a consulate back in 1844. Believe me, when I found some of the stuff I found, I began to wonder if I'm crazy or if God was leading me, because I was not specifically looking for that information. And then everything that would come into my mind, I'd check it and look, and lo and behold. So we'll see.
Let me,
Because Elder Tess talked about Saudi Arabia,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm not ready for that yet because I haven't gone to her video yet. It's on my list. But so the reason I brought up the letter, I ran across it in studies, and also when we're looking at the Middle East, the 10 risks in the Middle East. And somehow in that search, I ran across that not just the letter, but then the information on TikTok. And I was like, oh, that rings a bell, because I'd totally forgotten about it. But when October 7th happened, very soon after, a lot of videos were being posted about showing what Israel is doing in Palestine. And those videos are being posted with the hashtag, the letter, I don't remember how it said it, but it was directing them to the letter from Obama to the United States, bin Laden, sorry, the letter from bin Laden to the United States, which was written, or he sent out in 2002. And he states all his reasons. That doesn't mean that his reasons are right. It was only the purpose of understanding what's inside his frame of mind, why he hates the United States. So what Elder Test pointed out, and I believe it was in this history here, right around in here somewhere, because 2001 happens, 9/11 happens, and then the United States, I think we went into Afghanistan first. I think we went into Afghanistan first. I have some of the, I don't have all the dates exact in here in my mind yet, but it was I know it was November 9, 2001, at a battle where Islam was restrained. We marked the restraint. So you have this empowerment here. This was 1E and 2A and also 3A. So you have that, and then you have this restraint that happens with Islam, and then when I think it's 2002, somebody maybe help me, but when the United States, George Bush, we invade Iraq. Want to back up a minute? Back up, sorry. We're going to back up into this history, Desert Storm first. Go to this history real quick first. Desert Storm.
91, wasn't it?
91. Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait. You've had this history here with the Mujahideen being backed by the United States to beat Russia, which a few of the sites that I've read are linking the fall of the Soviet Union. They had good part of the cause of the fall of the Soviet Union was this Afghan war here with Russia. So the United States backs the Mujahideen. Bin Laden's a part of the Mujahideen. And now you have those that helped the United States, those that helped Saddam get into power. There are those now that want him out of power. And I don't remember all the details to Desert Storm, but you have Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait. I think he believed that Kuwait was stealing oil. They call it where they drill sideways, and he was drilling into Iraq, something like that, and accused him of that. Go ahead, Phil. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, slant drilling.
Slant drilling. Thank you. That's true. Correct word. Thank you. So he invades Kuwait, and Bin Laden, part of the Mujahideen, Russia is now out of Afghanistan, and Bin Laden goes to the Saudi government and says, "We'll go in there and help fight this, then fight and take down Saddam Hussein and protect Kuwait." And the Saudi government says, "No, we'll have the United States help us." What I don't know how to figure out here is because Mujahideen took the help of the United States. Bin Laden's part of that. But now you're going to have USA soldiers on the ground in Muslim territory. And that angers Bin Laden. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's when the Taliban was formed.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that coincides with Elder Tessa's study.
correct.
Yeah, with the Antigonus killing Pathan.
Yes, yes. We have to review that. I have to review that for sure. So you've got the Taliban being formed. You've got Bin Laden now angry at the Saudi government for letting the United States come in and fight a battle for them instead of them fighting that battle, and allowing the United States on the ground in their territory. And so then when you come back here and you have 9/11 happen, and then you have Bush Sr. now in the United States invading Iraq to take down Saddam Hussein for what? Weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist, right? And again, you have the United States involved in the Middle East. So you've got this going back into this history here where radical Islam is angry at the United States. I think what we want to keep in mind is, well, I don't know if I can say this right. the United States is on a path to the Sunday law. We see the ship taking us on that path to the Sunday law. And is it behaving with equality? Because we want to keep that in mind, because equality is
No,
the
it's
reason
not.
whole judgment comes.
It's not behaving with equality. I was just agreeing with you.
Okay, so bin Laden is angry at the Saudi government, and he actually, I don't know if I've read it this way, goes to war, but he goes to battle against the Saudi government. And there were actually Al-Qaeda terrorist strikes within Saudi Arabia for allowing the United States there. So you see them wanting to gather. You've got Revelation 9 telling us a time when they come together and have a king over them, right? So you see them wanting to come together and and form a caliphate. We see from bin Laden's letter in 2002, this is after we invade Iraq, I believe it was, that bin Laden's letter goes out. And first in 1996 and 1998, he writes what they call the fatwa. I don't know if anybody knows how to define that, but it was a document, however you write it, but a declare, I think it's a decree, something to that effect. I might be describing it wrong. But he puts his grievances in writing, and I'm pretty sure Elder Tess marked those as well. She might not have said it that way, I don't remember, but it's 96 and 98. He gives the warning, right? So the United States is understanding that this radical part of Islam is upset with the United States. And she marked it as upset because the United States is in Saudi Arabia. So in his letter that he writes, explanation or clarification, okay, thanks. An edict, okay, thank you for that. So in addition to that, within his letter, because yes, that's what triggers him here. In his letter, he's also specifying, this is the reason I brought this point out, and I'm open for correction on it. But he brings out many different things, and he brings out the things that the United States is doing in different Muslim countries, Muslim Islamic countries. The different things they're doing, that they're turning their, creating governments that are puppet governments to the United States. They're teaching in their schools. In other words, you're undoing all of our religion. And what do they want to do? They want to take this one true God and spread this one true God, because everybody should be following the one true God to the whole world. And so you have that religion that believes that all is the true God, and you have to spread this religion to everyone. And so bin Laden is angry at the United States. He puts it into writing, 96 and 98. The United States isn't going to listen to that. And then comes 9/11. Right? And you have Al-Qaeda rising in here. The Taliban and Al-Qaeda rising in here. So I don't know if that got us far enough. If we can spend just a little bit of the remaining time in looking at 9T. Is there any other thing to add? Anything I missed or messed up on in there that you see?
Your study it has turned on so many lights for me. I can't explain back everything as well as you have, but I so appreciate it ever since you began this.
Well, it's been helping me a lot. And especially when I stop and think about, okay, it's on the charts, right? Islam is on the charts. And yet we didn't see it. Not even this movement saw it. And we didn't even understand it even at 9/11. And it's the one question, maybe it fascinates me for this reason, but it's one question that I asked the pastor, and I've said this before, I asked the pastor that baptized me. Trying to remember the first question I asked him, but then I asked him about Islam. I asked him I said, do you ever think that there's more to understand? And his answer was, well, we really don't live up to the light what do you say? We We have to live up to the light we have before we can get new light. And we really, we really don't live up to the light we have. They didn't even have any light. Now they look back and it's like, what light did they even have? Because all of this history that we just are going through, they didn't have, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
and my
I-
elder Tess says, she says, look at World War One, World War Two, look at all the events, but the Adventists went off course in 1863.
Right.
Yeah, right. So they missed all of these important, the Civil War, all of these important things. Go ahead, fella. I think I just beat you by a second. Or I,
that's quite all right. Yeah. No, I heard in the conference structure, I can't remember which pastor it was, but I did hear a preacher preaching it wasn't specifically about 9/11, but 9/11 came into his speech, and he said that 9/11 had no significant prophetic significance in history. He said that.
Well, you got a better answer. Well, I don't know if it's a better answer, but you got more of an answer than I did. He just said, I don't even, actually, to this day, I cannot remember his answer. Other than when I asked him if there was more, that was the first question. And I said, what about Islam? Islam seems like it's just too big of a, too big to not be, a part of all this. And to this day, I do not remember his answer. And, but to me, it just always seemed like Islam was pretty significant.
I can't
So-
believe that somebody would actually say that 9/11 has no significant historic meaning. I mean, that's just crazy.
To not know your history, because the Adventists should have known that the history of the trumpets.
yes, and I remember the Adventists saying how many people came into the church. Their church was filled after 9/11. Well, they wanted to hear the truth, right? And the Adventist church didn't have it. So it's so sad.
So think about that with Daniel 2, right? Where the stone is cut out of the mountain. Do you see why the stone had to be cut out of that mountain
Yes.
and be given what they did not have, what they were missing? Sorry,
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I got the black screen in front of you.
No
I'm
one
trying to
knows
move it.
to run to us or go to us. Anyway, that always is a perplexing problem for me. But I'll just keep learning and trust God.
I just want to make a comment. A good beginner's review of Islam is back in 2015. Elder Parmender does a really good study about Islam and prophecy in France. I think it's July, but in there he lines up the the fifth trumpet, the sixth trumpet, and the seventh trumpet. The first trumpet, the woe, starts in 1299. The second trumpet starts right at when the first woe finishes at 1499. But interestingly, the seventh trumpet, which starts in 1844, but the woe starts, he marks the woe after just like the fifth trumpet. So it doesn't start right at when the trumpet starts. So I think that start may be 9/11,
Right.
Yeah.
And where you'd have the first woe plus the second woe equals a third woe. So
Yes. Yeah. And
he.
he did that in 2015 there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where I started, was on that video. So the first, it was actually 1449. I think that's probably what you meant, but 1449 would be the 150 years. So the woe portion was at the end of the trumpet, and then the second woe began right after. But that trumpet, the sixth trumpet, ends at 1840. The woe ends, the trumpet ends at 1840, and then the seventh trumpet doesn't begin until 1844. And another question I have, or just a thought, I guess just a thought, because it's been on my mind, is, and we're all probably familiar with this passage. Ellen White says this in multiple places, that what does the message need to sound like?
I knew this, but I forget how she words it. I'm trying.
Anybody remember? Didn't she say, give the trumpet a certain sound?
Ah, yes. And Jeff used to say that all the time.
And I don't know if this is total perfect application. I don't know, but as I've been studying this more and more, I'm thinking she said, give the trumpet a certain sound. Well, what's a trumpet? What do we see know the trumpet is?
Judgment. Give the judgment.
And who gives the judgment? Who
We would
brings
have
the
to give the
punishment?
message. The church was supposed to give the message of the
Right, but if you give the trumpet, the message of judgment, a certain sound,
Islam.
yeah. So it didn't have the certain sound if Islam wasn't there, right? I don't know if that's completely right. Maybe there's more to that, but that's what the study's been leading me to think, that we didn't give the trumpet a certain sound because looking at the charts, it's on the chart. And yet we come into 1989 and all that history that's been taking place from August 11th, 1840, all the way through Second World War. First World War. And then you have all the interaction. You got the Jewish people being sent back to Palestine, and the battles between the Jews and the Palestinians, Jews and Arabs. And then you have the support of the United States over
Yes.
the Jewish people, right?
Yes.
All
And
this
even at the
going on.
United Nations, there's way more Muslim countries represented there, but the United States has used its veto more than 20 times to override all those Muslim countries on behalf of Israel.
So one of the things, go ahead, sorry.
One more thing, I was looking at the church, I've got them here. They're just so small, I don't have the big ones. But the angels are right there by the first woe and the second woe on the charts, and the angels have trumpets. They're blowing trumpets on the chart.
Okay, so they're blowing trumpets on the chart, right? Or go ahead and finish.
That was all I wanted to say, is I never thought about it before. It just dawned on me. I just connected that because they are right there on that bottom right corner. On the other one, it's more of the middle. On the 1850 chart, it's more in the middle. But the trumpets are right there with the Islam, with the horses and the riders. And the trumpet is right behind Islam, the angel, blowing the trumpet.
Yeah. So we weren't blowing the trumpet. Because if you come to me, you're coming down to this history, this is where it's going to happen, right?
Can't see where you're pointing.
Oh, I
It's
moved
off.
my, sorry about that. Okay, so it's supposed to happen here, right? The angry horse is let loose.
Actually, yes,
The angry horse is let loose here. And
yes,
you're gonna be
but-
judged based on what you do here.
yes,
And
because
this
of
is all
Castor and
preparation.
Pollux.
Huh?
Castor and Pollux is marked at the Sunday law, the close of probation, and during Jacob's time of trouble.
So you have all this history you're supposed to prepare. And it's not until 2019 you start to go back and review all this history and see how Islam is actually in Daniel 11:40 in their history. And we see the first and second woe, the fifth and sixth trumpet. We see all this history, and you come in here, and all this activity is going on in the Middle East, and nobody's understanding, has no idea of who Islam really is. It's just the religion that's out there that's causing problems. But literally, it's radical Islam that's going to come here, and it's blindness to it, right?
Yeah, we didn't know.
We didn't know, and I just wanted to comment on Mary's comment. I think that's what that means, Mary, but I don't know for sure. But when Jesus rides in on the ass and her colt, the two donkeys, because we know that it does represent Islam. And then you have the story of Balaam as well. To give
Does
us
that mean his second coming then is because Islam would be in the tribulation time and then the second coming?
I
would
don't
be
know, that would,
coming.
and I don't feel qualified at all with that, but it's interesting that it says a donkey and the colt. There is two, but there's this, it's also specifying what's a colt.
Baby horse.
It's gonna be a baby one, right?
I guess it could be a baby donkey. I don't know.
It would have to be if it's a donkey and her colt, I would think,
Oh, yeah, you're right.
if that's the way it says it. I may be wrong the way it says it, but I always thought it was the baby. So anyway, so we don't have that certain sound. So this is 9T in the last crisis. What do we, as not Adventists, but I guess people in this movement, what have we looked at this chapter to reveal to us?
We thought this was 9/11.
We thought it was 9/11. And what do we know it to be now?
Close of probation.
Yeah, and I think what we'll find, and we'll try to go through it, we're not going to get through it all today. But she's describing before and then after. So the preparation before, and then what's going to come as a result. Whatever your preparation was, but there's a place where it ends. Okay, so she's identifying we're in the time of the end right off the bat. And so to her, what is the time of the end?
1798.
1798. I don't know if I'm going to leave that on the board or not. I don't know if I have room to write this down here. I'm going to try to do it from memory, what he did.
That was always nebulous, but the time of the end, because it's like we've been in the time of the end forever. People have been saying that, but the way he clarifies it, that there is a starting point to the time of the end, and that it's a continual process to the end. So there's the beginning of the time of the end, and then the end of the time of the end.
Right, right. So you're in the time of the end. Maybe we'll switch back and forth between screen share and the board. So we're in the time of the end, and it's the fast fulfilling signs. There are signs of the times that are happening, these fast fulfilling signs of the times. She's writing in her history, and I think 9T was written in early 1900s, wasn't it? Maybe somebody remembers that. I think it was early 1900s. But the time of the end in her mind began in 1798, and the fast fulfilling signs of the times declare the coming of Christ is near. So it's not here, but it's near. The days which we live are solemn and important. The Spirit of God is gradually but surely being withdrawn from the earth. Plagues and judgments are already falling upon the despisers of the grace of God. The calamities by land and sea, the unsettled state of society, the alarms of war are portentous. They forecast approaching events of the greatest magnitude. So this is referring to what's happening, but what's happening is forecasting the greatest magnitude. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm going to miss a lot of details that he gives. 1909, that's what I thought. Thank you. I'm going to miss a lot of the details that he gave, and eventually we'll try to get to them. Okay, so and this was a definition that I found for portentous. The words fateful and ominous are common synonyms for portentous. While all three words mean having a menacing or threatening aspect, portentous suggests being frighteningly big or impressive, but now seldom definitely connotes forewarning of calamity. So a forewarning there, but it's frighteningly big or impressive, and it's a forewarning of calamity. The agencies of evil are combining their forces and consolidating. They're strengthening for the last great crisis. So we're in the time of the end, but there's going to be a last great crisis. Great changes are soon to take place in our world. We're all familiar with this one, and the final movements will be rapid ones. I think we can all understand we're living in the rapid ones at this point. But she's still writing from the perspective of 1798 to where she's at. And 1909, you weren't yet in World War I yet, right? But you had that whole period of revolutions that were going on. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole period of revolutions going on. Because wasn't there a German Revolution, and that was 1849 or something, 48? And all the different revolutions were going on, and you go in 1798. Prior to 1798, you had the French Revolution. So you had this whole period of wars and revolutions, and leading up to World War I. The condition of things in the world shows the troublous times are right upon us. That troublous times are right upon us. The daily papers, where are they getting their? Where is she saying they're getting their information?
You wrote it there, newspaper prophets.
Right. So the daily papers are full of indications of a terrible conflict in the near future. So the newspaper prophets or the journalists are telling, and keep in mind what we just looked at in 1989, this movement is raising up, but Islam's not considered in that raising up. Islam's not considered in even though we have it on the charts that Islam is the first and second woe, we know that this third woe would be would then therefore have to be Islam. We have all this history that has been neglected to look at, but the newspaper prophets are telling us all these different terrible things that are going on, that are indications of the terrible conflict in the near future. And this built up to, I don't know if this is right to say this, because she's writing this in 1909, this is before World War I. So you then have World War I, and as a part of World War I is still part of the Ottoman Empire, right? The Ottoman Empire didn't completely crumble apart until the end of World War I believe. Okay, so then you have bold robberies, frequent strikes, thefts, murders, men possessed of demons taking the lives of men, women, little children. Men have become infatuated with vice of every species of evil prevails. The enemy has succeeded in perverting justice. What does it mean to pervert justice?
No equality, upside down justice system,
Yeah,
not fair. And the infatuated with vice. We were under a moral, when we were reading this back before we have this understanding that we did, we saw that as morality. Like gambling, horse racing, movies, vice, right? Drinking.
yeah. She goes on to say, I think that she goes on to talk about that corrupting the mind as well, which part of our blindness too, but blindness of the world. So perverting justice. So that means you've got true justice, or you twist it and turn it upside down, and you've got perverted justice. Abortion would have been in that list. Yeah. Yes, because perverting justice and equality, you're denying rights and taking away rights that people have fought for, and you're perverting justice.
And look at now with the embryos. You know, they've totally denied science,
Yeah.
because a baby is a baby when it's born, and then they change that definition to that the fetus is a baby, and then they now have backtracked to where the embryo, the egg inside of you, is an unborn baby. You know,
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, it is. So this is Isaiah. The enemy has succeeded in perverting justice and in filling men's hearts with the desire for selfish gain. So you got greed going on there, right? Justice standeth afar off, for truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. And can't remember, I think it was equity that I looked up in there. Yeah, equity. Properly, straightforwardness, figuratively, integrity, concretely, a truth, equity, right thing, uprightness. But when we understand equity today, as we understand equity today, is you have to bring in equity before you can reach equality. You have to have some less qualified leaders over some more qualified leaders to bring in equity before you can get to equality. And the way that it would have been best to go along is, while you're bringing in equity, everybody cooperate with bringing in equity. Instead, we have people that were fighting bringing in equity and called it unequal. You're being unequal. Susie says, definition: deliberately do something that will make it difficult to discover who really committed a particular crime, perverted justice. Thank you for that.
It's really sad too, if you think about it, because it has to do with not wanting to give up self. Like, if you're so talented and you're bypassed to provide equity to someone less talented, then really truly the heavenly government would operate where the one more talented would lend knowledge and help and training wheels to that person that's less talented. But mostly they stand back and can't wait to see that person fail, because they want their position or they want their honor. You know, the ones who are willing to give up that honor and still help and share what they've learned, that I think is what God wants us to do in any way we can.
Yeah, so continuing on, thank you for that. In the great cities, there are multitudes living in poverty and wretchedness, well nigh destitute of food, shelter, and clothing, while in the same cities are those who have more than heart could wish, who live luxuriously, spending their money on richly furnished houses. Take note of that, where their money is going to, their houses. On personal adornment, or worse still, upon the gratification of sensual appetites, upon liquor, tobacco, and other things that destroy the powers of the brain, unbalance the mind, and debase the soul. She says the cries of starving humanity are coming up before God. Where do we hear those cries of starving humanity coming up in the Bible? She quotes it later.
Isaiah.
Isaiah. I was thinking of James. It's probably in Isaiah too. But I was thinking particularly of James.
The stuff you're talking about sounds like we're living through the time of Timothy 3:1, where it talks about the people they're more involved with themselves and the type of living that they can live. And
Lovers of pleasure.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was taken back when reading down further. It talks about traitors, being traitors to what just the word stood out to me, and I was thinking about the stuff that the GOP and Trump and the right was doing to this country. And it fits right in with all that.
So the cries, she quotes down a little bit further, James chapter 5, where the cries have reached up to the Lord of Sabaoth. That's where I'm coming from, but I'm sure it's in other places too. So while by every species of oppression and extortion, men are piling up colossal fortunes. So we see when it comes to economics, we see the class separation happening. The rich getting richer, and there's only a few, and the poor, many, getting poorer by robbery, which James also points out. So then she gives that, and she says the cries are now here, crying out, coming up. The cries of starving humanity are come up before God. While all this is going on, the cries are coming up. Now she's gonna, I don't know if this is the way I picture it. She's gonna transition and say, okay, now this is what I saw. On one occasion, when in New York City, I was in the night season, called upon to behold buildings rising story after story toward heaven. These buildings were warranted to be fireproof, and they were erected to glorify their owners and builders. Higher and still higher, these buildings rose, and in them the most costly material was used. Those whom these buildings belonged were not asking themselves, how can we best glorify God? The Lord was not in their thoughts. So surely we can read that and take our minds immediately to 9/11. But what's the context that she's trying to give us in this whole passage? And we put it in the chat thread last week. I'm trying to remember which one it was. And I know I'm listening to it on my phone. I can't remember which one it was, but the damaging ignorance, that's the one, the damaging ignorance of 9/11, something like that. I think that's the one where he really breaks this down. And I haven't gotten through to transcribe that one. So, but if you want to get more detail on this, that's the place to go. So, and then she goes on with her thinking. Those that are thus investing their means could see, if they could see that those that were investing in their means could see their course as God sees it. So you've got this judgment that is coming, and that's what she's talking about, is the judgment's going to come, the close of probation is going to come, and you're this close to the close of probation, and this is what people are doing. They're piling up magnificent buildings, but how foolish. And remember, she specified back here, where does she have it on the houses that they're having, their houses, richly furnished houses, right? And then she goes to buildings, story after story, which is going to take your mind to New York City. They're piling up magnificent buildings, but how foolish in the sight of the ruler of the universe is their planning and devising. They're not studying with all the powers of heart and mind how they might glorify God. They have lost sight of this, the first duty of man. And these lofty buildings, okay, he goes into the definition of lofty, which I did try to find just to add into this, but thus far I haven't found it. But what does lofty mean? Maybe somebody can look it up and put in the chat what they find. But what does lofty mean?
High.
I
think simply.
Or grandeur.
exalted,
Yes.
Mary said.
Yes, that would be good.
Those are similar to what I found too. And he goes on to lofty also, meaning like magnificent, not necessarily height, but how magnificent. So doesn't
But
have to
height can
necessarily
be
height.
also symbolic in that, like grandeur, like
Yes,
Logina.
exactly. Exactly. So, because we know that she transitions to Nashville, and in Nashville, when she's talking about mansion, is a mansion the same thing as a skyscraper?
No. Well, no, not necessarily.
Right. So you have this vision that she has of New York City. And then she goes on to continue to talk about the before, and then what the before leads up to. And so you have these lofty buildings that go up, and the owners rejoiced with ambitious pride that they had money to use in gratifying self and provoking the envy of their neighbors. So again, you could read it connected to the New York buildings, but who are our neighbors? You could have, because I'm thinking of, look at the history of Donald Trump, and I know we don't want to put one person as who's responsible, because we know that's not the case. It's an institution. But you can go back through the history and look at Donald Trump as an example, and look at many others that build the buildings that they do, and they do want each building to be. What about that one in Dubai? Isn't it the one
That's
in Dubai?
exactly what I was thinking is Dubai.
Don't they all just
Look
want
at that.
to beat the previous one?
Yes, or you think of any of these fancy cities now, they're all like that,
Yeah. So, but then it's talking about neighbors. So neighbors could go either way. It could be your neighbor that built a tall skyscraper and you're going to build a bigger one. But there's to me, there's, and I'm not real, well versed on this, but
Well,
I at least see a back and forth going on. Go ahead, Phil.
I believe in this context, neighbors are the poor.
Yes. Exactly.
They're the majority.
and the grinding down, like I was thinking of those that go to work in Dubai, or the ones that were working in Israel, the Filipinos that would go there, because they're offering you money, but for such hard labor or under such conditions that because they're so poor, they're willing to come and work in those terrible heated conditions, like in Dubai and Israel. Some were killed by Hamas just because they were there. But they were there because they were helping build, right? But they got caught up in it too. But how they pervert and pay such piddly wages to these people, but still larger wages than the people get where they're coming from, right? They come so that they can earn a living and bring that money back home. It's just so sad.
Yeah, it is. It is. So then she goes on to say, much of the money that they thus invested had been obtained through exaction, through grinding down the poor. So they're robbers, taking and using and abusing, however you want to put it, all of it, and for themselves to become rich and wealthy. They forget that in heaven an account of every business transaction is kept. Every unjust deal, every fraudulent act is there recorded. Now she says that the time is coming. So you've got all this that's happening, this description of all that's happening. And now she's going to say the time is coming when, and we already said that the cries are the starving humanity are crying out. And we could put, who would we say? We say the neighbors are the poor, but also how would we define the poor? Are we talking about just the fact that they don't have a big enough house? What else are we defining as the poor?
Poor in spirit, like Jesus said, blessed are the, no, because, well, you'd have to recognize your poor in spirit. I know where you're going. You mean poor because they aren't given the truth that they need to be rich.
What's our test? Go ahead. Was Phil going to say something?
Well, when you asked that question, the first people that came to my mind were the immigrants.
What's one word that would encompass not just immigrants, but everything we see going on? Immigrants they have another name that we might refer to them as. Or if you're African American or you're LGBTQ, who are you?
Other.
Minorities.
The minorities? I didn't hear Phil. That would say the same.
Others.
Yeah, others. The marginalized.
Yeah, marginalized.
Marginalized, dehumanized.
Disenfranchised, marginalized, dehumanized.
Yes.
Oppression, Christina said. Okay, so the time is coming. And if you go into Ezekiel, I think it's 16. Don't remember what verse. Might be 46, but you might turn there and there's not 46 verses, but I think there is. But anyways, in chapter 16, where it defines, Ezekiel defines the sin of Sodom. And it sounds very familiar. Okay, so the time is coming when their fraud and insolence will reach a point. So there's going to be a time that comes that reaches a point that the Lord will no longer permit them to pass. What's that point?
Close of probation.
So there's a close of probation coming. And they will learn that there is a limit to the forbearance. What is forbearance?
Withholding judgment, long suffering, or bearing all the iniquity that's happening.
Yeah. Christina said the cup is full. Yeah. Where the cup comes. So before there's forbearance, and after there's no forbearance. Right?
Yeah.
Correct.
So then she says, so if you're looking at 1798 till the close of probation, you're going to see that this is all taking place between 1798. If you're going by her writing, you're going to see all this taking place between 1798 till the close of probation. Because before the close of probation, there's forbearance. And after the close of probation, there's no forbearance. So now she says, the scene that next passed before me was an alarm of fire. Ben looked at the lofty and supposedly fireproof buildings and said they are perfectly safe, but these buildings were consumed as if made of pitch. The fire engines could do nothing to stay the destruction. The firemen were unable to operate the engines. So we saw scenes that could be similar, described similar to that at 9/11. But what is she really talking about here?
Nine 11 was just, I mean, the scenes described here are similar, but that was just a little small taste of the bigger destruction that is to come.
Right. Because it's a time where there is nothing that can stay the destruction. In other words, nothing can stop it.
Right.
And didn't we have a restraint on Islam and stopped it?
Yes.
Yes.
Which
there-
gives a human being the ability to think he has some control over these things, but he's going to find out he doesn't.
Yeah.
Sorry, Phil, go ahead.
No, it's just going to be overwhelmed.
I was also thinking of the Titanic because, you know, they always said even God himself can't sink this ship. You know, it's that mentality. And they've got their safe rooms and they've got their food supplies and stocks in their safe rooms. And, you know, they think that they've built their own safety net, which won't hold.
Yeah. So you just two separate things that you brought up, Susan, just reminded me. You know, God Himself could not bring it down, and then the embryo. That is what the judge said. Judge was quoted as saying that the embryos are the face of God.
Oh my gosh. That's unbelievable. It's just, just when you think nothing can surprise you,
Yeah, I know.
that really is an unbelievable thing to say.
And then they're backpedaling now because, you know, what a lot of these men that are enacting these laws, because it is predominantly men, they don't really understand IVF, and they're not really thinking about what they're doing, because the majority of women that have IVF are white women, middle class white women. because the middle-class white women, their birth rates have dropped dramatically. So the white, Caucasian race in America has dramatically fallen, and the black and brown races have increased in numbers. And so when they're thinking about it, and a lot of the ultra right are realizing that if they do this, look at the what you just said about, if you look at you see the face of God or whatever at these embryos, they're basically going to be it's like you're annihilating your own race, because white women have had a big problem in in having childbirth, natural childbirth. So now
But
they're
they say you can't destroy those. You don't own those. They're God's.
Yes, I know. There are some now that they're backpedaling, and they're realized, because like Donald Trump comes out and says, oh no, we're not, we are for IVF and we are for childbearing, and he put out that thing right after that, because they're realizing that if they do that, the white race will plummet. I mean, there just won't be white births, because the biggest like I was telling you, the IVF is done mainly with white women, because I mean,
It's expensive.
it's $30,000 and $40,000. Who has that kind of money? So
And if you think about it, if an egg is life, then what about men's sperm?
yeah,
Right? And what about, okay, I mentioned this, today's Saturday, I think it was Wednesday or yesterday, Friday, anyway, in polite company. So if a man wastes some of that sperm, there's millions of sperm that come out that only one sperm reaches the egg to
right.
make. So what about the millions of sperm they're wasting? Is that face of children on all those sperm?
Now, see,
All on the women.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all
I
on the
mean,
women.
just it's so ludicrous.
that's a good point you just brought up. A very good point. Millions go down the drain and nothing said. That's a good point. I just didn't know that. Look down the street. Oh boy.
So these white men in predominantly right-wing conservatives in it was Alabama, right? They're having to think about this again now, because now they just basically, it's about control over women. That's all it is. They don't even they don't see the face of God in an embryo. They don't. They control over women. They want ultimate control over women, and that's bottom line.
I just want to finish this last paragraph so that because we're over time again, but I wanted to mention something that I ran across this just a couple days before I was with my daughter one time. It was probably around Christmas time. Yeah, because Christmas Eve they came over here for a little bit. And I'd ran across it, but I don't think I knew at the time. I knew what they were talking about, but I didn't know what the acronym was. But did anybody heard the acronym DINK, DINK?
Yes, it's double income, no kids.
Right, dual income, no kids, double income, no kids. And I think I was just thinking as I'm listening to this discussion about how interesting it is that the generation, a lot in the generation today, there's people that have cut back and some don't even want children. And listening to the discussion you're having, knowing that the white race that generally is going to be able to afford IVF, and yeah, it's interesting. I don't know all the answers to it, but I mean, it's definitely interesting that because we know that they want to preserve their race. So let's just do this last paragraph, and then we'll close with the thoughts that are in this one. Because we can see that you're going through this transition, that there's going to be there's a time of forbearance, and then there's time where there's no forbearance. And so this last paragraph says, I'm instructed that when the Lord's time comes, and when's the Lord's time? Should no change have taken place in the hearts of proud, ambitious human beings, humanity will find that the hand that had been strong to save, and who's that hand that's strong to save? Who's the one that's saving? Will be strong to destroy. So who's the hand that's strong to save?
God's hand.
God can. And so when you go back into that other paragraph about forbearance, there will be no forbearance. So there's a time of saving, and then there's a time where that same hand is strong to destroy.
But I don't see it the way that God would come down with his fist. I see it that God withholds his hand, pulls his hand back from extending it
Yeah,
out.
it allows the angry horse to let loose
Yeah.
in that context. So you have this time of forbearance, and there's no destruction. Instead, there's saving. And then you have this time where it's strong to destroy. Who or what is being saved or destroyed? Saved, and who's not being destroyed? What is not being destroyed? Because if you read the story, she's talking about buildings. But what do we know is being saved and what's not being saved?
People.
People, right? I don't think that the buildings, I don't know if I'm gonna say this right.
But you
I'm in
could
the business
even think
saving
of a
buildings.
building as our house, the body in which we live, and some people sure build some fancy mansions. They can they can afford to.
So there's a time of forbearance. That's a time when there's saving going on, or there's not destruction happening. And then there's a point that you reach, you cross that limit of that forbearance, where there's no saving, and instead it's destruction. And we're talking about human beings, not buildings, right? So isn't she telling us a story?
You mean a parable
Yeah,
in a sense?
in a sense. I don't know if
But I think we're also going to see literal destruction.
Yes, but yeah, and we're not going to finish this today, so we're going to end there. I don't know if I know how to highlight here.
Mary brought up a good point. Could the buildings also be institutions? And I would have to agree, Mary.
I don't know how to make this highlight in here, but I'll try to do
Because
it afterwards.
institutions are organized.
There we go.
Well, look up the definitions.
Yeah, we'll close it for here.
What
for
I
now.
had to do, because I kept going back, is that an institution? Is that an institution? You know, so I kept Googling different things so I could round out my understanding of an institution.
I think a big part of that, this particular chapter or this particular portion, is to just be able to distinguish at least that, was 9/11 necessary? We want to look at, was 9/11, with everything that we went through before, was 9/11 necessary? So we'll probably try to continue that, I think, on Wednesday, if everybody's good with that. And but close for now. If Gloria, would you like to close us in prayer?
Sure, yeah. Can we bow our heads? Dear loving God, thank you for this studies about Islam. It really shake us up to the time that we're living in. We are in the very last days here, and help us to absorb this, understand this, and to be able to share with one another. Thank you for the work that Elaine is doing for us and keeping us in our toes here to study these prophecies. May you continue to be with us throughout the Sabbath day and gather us again throughout the week. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Gloria.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Beautiful.